Hey everyone, Eugene here, and today we're checking out one of my favorite pieces of equipment, this hip thrust machine. Straight out of the box, this thing is great, and for under $200, it's a steal. But there's one catch. The biomechanics, they're not perfect. The main issue is the pendulum design. It follows an arc rather than just following the path of your hips. It tends to feel a bit awkward, and once you notice it, it's kind of hard not to notice it. So, the big question is, can we fix it? Can we make it feel more natural without spending thousands of dollars on a commercial machine?
Well, let's find out.
So, let's start with the stock machine. This is the model known as the HRTQ, which is commonly sold under brands like GMWD, Syedee, and a few other off-label brands you might find on Temu. Now, I've been using this machine almost every leg day since I got it for my home gym, and I generally really like it. In fact, I have a separate review video on this machine, which you can find linked up here. The only thing I changed so far is I replaced the flimsy plastic weight horns with these metal ones, which were some extra storage weight horns I had lying around in my rack, and haven't really done anything else with the machine since. But here's where things get a little more tricky. This roller is bolted directly to this pendulum, and that means instead of following the motion of your hips have to follow the motion of the pendulum, which wants to arc back on you. And this is where that awkwardness comes from, especially when there's a lot of weight loaded on the machine. And the higher you thrust, the more noticeable it gets. Also, unlike with the barbell, there isn't really a great place to put your hands while you're doing the movement, and I feel like having a better place to grip would also make me feel more stable during the exercise and give me some more lifting strength. So, that's the main thing we're going to try and fix. Okay, now that we know what the issue is, let's take a closer look at the machine and see what we can figure out. Here's where the stock roller bolts to the pendulum arms. And that's really the root of the problem, is that it's bolted directly on. So that's what we're going to attempt to fix. We're going to see, can we design some kind of a bracket or a mounting system to attach a roller here such that it has the ability to articulate forward and back on either some kind of pivot or something that allows it to hinge so that as we do the movement, that it can follow our hips more naturally. Now let's compare doing this movement in the machine compared to just doing a free weight barbell hip thrust and see the difference in the path of the roller versus the bar. With the bar, as you can see, the path is much more straight versus the arc we see in the pendulum. And now we'll slow it down a bit and overlay the two on each other where it becomes really visible. Do you see the difference there? With the pendulum, the machine is forcing you to move with it versus doing the barbell hip thrust where the bar moves with your hips. So the challenge is to flip that equation around and make the machine follow your movement instead of you having to adapt to the machine. Can we somehow mount a roller here such that it has some freedom to move and follow our hips as we're doing the hip thrust? And then, instead of us conforming to the machine can conform to us. Now for the roller itself, I'm not sure we'll be able to reuse this roller due to how the current mounting system is designed. So I took some measurements, and what we need is some kind of a bar here that's about 34 inches. So I went to Home Depot and bought this galvanized steel pipe for about 20 bucks. And then use my Dremel tool to cut it down to size. After that, we're gonna drill some holes, and then we have a place where we can attach our new roller to whatever new bracket we design. Then we're gonna need to figure out some kind of a bracket here, and we're gonna go rummage through our parts bin and see what we can find. Now, to attach it to the machine, I found these green brackets, and these might look a bit familiar to you. These are actually from a set of prime knockoff handles, I think made by Horicom, and I never liked the paddle cable attachments, so I ended up scrapping them, and then these brackets have been lying in my bins part for the last year or so, and now they finally get their day in the sun. Now, I did have to make a slight modification here in order to get it to fit these bolt mounting points. Basically, I needed to widen one of these holes a bit, so I just used my Dremel tool and removed some material here so that an M10 bolt can fit through this hole. Now, these are pretty thick and heavy duty, so I have no concerns about them being able to hold the load. So here's the plan. We're going to remove these original brackets. We're going to attach these new brackets here. We're going to use some of these eye nuts and M10 bolts to set up places where we can attach our new bar. And then we're going to put a pad on it and see how it feels. Now for the fun part, let's do some fabricating and assembly. So first we need to cut this pipe down to size. And then I drilled a couple of holes on the ends so that we can have some mounting points, which we can use to attach via some carabiners to our new mounting bracket.
Now let's remove the original mounting hardware and the original roller here. As for the mounting brackets themselves, we're going to take these eye nuts and use an M10 bolt to attach them through these holes where the paddle is used to attach. And then that eye loop will be the perfect carabiner attachment to which we're going to attach our new roller bar that we just fabricated. And then that's going to replace our original roller.
Now, I grabbed some of these M10 bolts and eye nuts from Amazon for about $10. So if you're curious about those, they're linked in the description below.
Okay, now let's mount our newly fabricated brackets onto the pendulum of the machine. And now let's do the same thing on the other side.
Now we've got our new brackets on, and now let's figure out how to attach our new bar and put our foam roller on it. So here's our trimmed down pipe that we're going to use. So let's see how that goes. Here's the holes we made at the tip of the bar. So we're going to use the same type of eye nuts and a bolt. We're going to use that to attach our bar. Ta-da! Okay, now we have our bar attached here. As you can see, I've just used a simple carabiner here and here. So whenever we get in and out of the machine, simply clip on the carabiner, and here's our new articulating bar. So let's give it a try. Not bad. Obviously not very comfortable with just the bare metal right on my hips. So let's fix that next. Here we have this lovely RitFit hip thrust pad, which is something I used to use for my Smith machine hip thrusts. Now it will find a new purpose as being the hip thrust pad for this machine. And I'll link this one in the description as well if you're curious about getting one of these. So let's install our hip thrust pad. Let's see how this feels. All right, not bad. Let's try this. Notice now how these carabiners are now able to articulate a bit as we do the movement, move back and forth. And this is also something we could tune potentially by using either a bigger carabiner or a series of them. So we'll work on fine tuning that later, but this already feels pretty good. Now, additionally, we also have some space here where we can grab with our hands as we do the exercise. So now we've also added that bit of comfort as well. All right. Let's see what happens when we add some weight. All right. First test with one set of 45s on here. Let's see how it goes. This already feels much better. Now, pay attention here, as you can see how this articulates and moves a bit forward as I do the movement. So now it's really staying in that groove of my hips, exactly where I want it. Some more weight. Let's see how our machine holds up. Now, I think I can make one more comfort enhancement to this machine. You recognize these guys. These were the grips that came off of the bicep curl machine, which you can see that video up here, and I'll link that in the description below. I think what I can do is cut off these caps and then slide them onto this pipe and have an even more comfortable spot to grip rather than just gripping onto the metal pipe. So let's see how that goes. Now, getting these on here was actually a lot more challenging than it looks like, because the pipe's diameter was also slightly larger than the original handles they came off of. So we're going to apply some age-old wisdom, which is make sure to lube up your rubber. Alright, and it's finally on there. Then we just have to repeat the same process on the other side, but I'll spare you that footage. Now, I also decided to swap out the carabiners for these larger ones to allow for a bit more articulation and smoother movement. Alright, got another set of 35s on there. Let's see how the machine feels now. So far, so good. let's do the final test with 210 pounds. See if there's any weird bending or other issues with the machine when we're doing a real working weight. Alright, everything feels pretty good. The only change I would probably make, I'll probably remove another, maybe an 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch of material right here, because it does rub against this nut just a little bit, but that seems to be the only issue I've observed so far. I gotta say, the movement feels great. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. Now we have a machine that feels better than most commercial quality machines. Now let's take a final look at the path of our pink roller. I know it's obstructed by the machine a bit, but pay attention to how it's able to articulate versus the movement of the pendulum. And here we're going to try and trace it with a line, just so we can track that versus how the original design of the machine is. So here's where we landed. For under $300, we ended up with a machine that I think feels better than most commercial quality machines. So we've spent $200 in the machine, $30 on these handles, which turned into brackets, maybe $20 of hardware and carabiners, $25 for the roller, $20 for the pipe. So for a total cost of under $300, we've built a machine that rivals, and I would say exceeds, many commercial machines. Here's why. Now, many machines you'll see out there, like a popular one from Hammer Strength, use a belt in order to solve this articulation problem. The issue with using a belt is that it tends to dig into your hips when you're really starting to put the weight on. So a lot of the time when I use those machines, I'd have to grab something like a foam balance pad and put it under the belt in order to make the exercise tolerable while I do it with one of these belt-based machines. And now, with this design, we have the best of both worlds. We have the comfort of a bar to grab on, as well as a thick roller to place on our hips that's not going to dig in. And we have the articulating capability of something like a belt in order to follow our hips as we do the movement. So if you have one of these machines, don't hesitate to do some DIY, because you can make it an even better experience. Now, if you've enjoyed watching this video, I'd like you to please consider giving me a like and a subscribe in order to get more of my content in the future. And I'll also leave some links to items that were useful for this DIY project in the description below. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.